Okay, well, let me get started. I apologize, I'm not using my video. First mistake, I tried cleaning my webcam and I actually scratched it. So if you want to see what I look like, there I am. See that? I'm like Q from QAnon. You can't see me anymore because I destroyed my webcam. And unfortunately, every store around here is all out of webcams. So I apologize for that. So instead, you get this look at this wonderful picture of a Florida scrub jay, which, in my opinion, is a much better picture anyway. So let me see. I got some more people to admit here.
Much prettier, Michael.
Yeah. So let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Weisensee, and this is Leslie Brown, and we're going to be co-hosting this event. This is a program that we developed for our final project for the Florida Master Naturalist Coastal Program. And we've given this presentation live a few times, but this is going to be our first online Zoom Birdinar, so Bird ID seminar, yeah. So fingers crossed, hopefully everything goes well. Already I screwed up my camera, like I said, and hopefully that's the only problem that we have. But I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody just because we don't want to have a bunch of background noise. It gets a little bit crazy. So I apologize for that. But if you want to communicate with us, you can do so through the chat function. And look around on your screen, and maybe in the bottom center, you can pull up the chat bar. And if you have questions, you can send those to Leslie. If you're using a mobile device, it might be up in the upper right-hand side. There's like a 3-dot menu. You can drop down for the chat. But what I'd like you to do first is, let's give that a try. Hey, Bren, I see you there. Hello. What I'd like you to do is, if you could type into the chat box what town that you're viewing this presentation from. Kind of curious to see where everyone's at, because I know we have some snowbirds. So if you can just go ahead and in the chat box. Right now it's set on everybody. And yes, Leslie Brown is from Englewood. Okay, Jan's from Venice. Got someone got a couple more people here to admit.
Did you say Michigan? Did you chat Michigan?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so it looks like people are getting the hang of it. Boston, all right, Placida, Wisconsin, well, Naples. Okay, great. So if you have a question that you want to ask, I suggest that you use this little drop-down menu. If you look at your chat box, there's a little down arrow, and you can send it directly to Leslie, and she's going to be monitoring the chat throughout the presentation. And if you have a question or if you have a problem with Zoom, she'll do her best. She's more experienced with Zoom than I am. And she'll break in if you have a question and she doesn't think that I'm not answering. And hopefully we'll get an answer for you. So that's basically how it's going to work. Today's presentation is going to be on the 12 species of herons that we commonly see in this part of Southwest Florida. And oh, there's a hand raised. Leslie, do you want to reach out to Marianne there? So I should mention that this program is being sponsored by CHEC, Charlotte Harbor Environmental Center. For those of you that are not familiar with that, that is a nonprofit organization that manages 2 Charlotte County-owned parks, one here locally in Englewood called Cedar Point, and also one in Punta Gorda called Alligator Creek. And in addition to managing those parks, we also do educational outreach, walking tours, birding, wading trips, kayak trips, and these programs are free to the public. And we're able to do that because we get grant funding and we also get donations for the public. So if you like what we present and like to see more programs like that, I would encourage you to visit the Czech website. And let me go ahead and I'm going to put that link here in the chat so you can see that. And you can go there and if you want to see what's on the schedule of upcoming events or make a donation, would be greatly appreciated that. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to minimize my video so get that out of the way. And again, send direct messages to Leslie if you have any questions, and we will get started. All right, so again, this is 12 species of herons, and they are considered wading birds. So wading birds are typically long legs, long neck, long bills, and they're called wading birds because they're in shallow water, walking around foraging mostly, hunting for fish and other prey. They are not typically found swimming like a duck or diving under the water like cormorants and that sort of thing, or plummeting into the water like pelicans or osprey. They're waders, so wading birds. So let's look at the first bird that we're going to talk about today. So what I would like you to do is type in the chat what species that you see on the screen right there. What do you got? Type it into the chat. So large bird, right? Very bold stripes above the eye, white crown down the middle. Yeah, Frank's got it. Yeah, Jake's got it. Fantastic. Yeah, and if you're a birder and not a great typist like myself, and you want to use the 4-letter abbreviation, feel free. But yeah, I think this one's there. You go, Leslie. Leslie, good job. Yeah, so that is a great blue heron, right? And blue is kind of a stretch. I mean, it's mostly what I'm looking at is mostly a kind of a gray blue bird. Probably better called a gray heron, but there's already a species in the Eastern Hemisphere that's called a gray heron. So we'll stick with great blue. You can see the range. It's pretty extensive across the United States. I should mention that all the range maps and some of the pictures that I'm showing tonight are provided by an app called Merlin Bird ID from Cornell University. I reached out to them and they said it was okay, as long as I plugged their app. So there's the plug. Merlin Bird ID app is a fantastic tool that I recommend everyone using. There's someone else is trying to join us. Okay. So here's another picture. There's, again, really broad stripes above the eye, very diagnostic. You have the breeding plumes coming off the back of the head that are dark, kind of the shaggy feathers, modified feathers off the chest. And they actually serve a purpose. It's kind of interesting. A great blue heron has kind of like a comb-like structure between its middle toes, and it'll rake through those feathers and produce like this powdery down that it'll use to preen itself to kind of keep the pond scum and fish oils and stuff off its feathers. Also take note of this little reddish area. Can you guys see my my mouse? Leslie, can you see me using the mouse? Yeah, okay. So that area, it's not an injury, it's not a bald spot. Those are actually rufous colored feathers. They're on what I'm going to call the shoulder and on the thighs. Can't tell you how many times we've gotten calls at the wildlife center for people saying there's an injured bird, and no, it's actually those are actual feathers. They're just colored that rusty or rufous color, kind of makes it look like an injury. As far as what they eat, well, you can see fish is definitely on the table, but for great blue herons, they will eat just about anything that they can swallow, right? So it could be fish, it could be reptiles, amphibians. I watched an epic battle between a great blue and a water snake at the celery fields that lasted about 10 minutes. The bird won. They also eat other birds, and they will eat mammals, small mammals. If you want to see a kind of an interesting videos, kind of slightly disturbing, you can you can Google great blue heron eats gophers, and you can see a great blue heron walking through fields and punching its bill down and pulling gophers out of the ground. Again, it's pretty interesting, but slightly disturbing, I guess. What else? Okay, so I chose this picture. This is from Ollie's Pond, just to show that the flight feathers are this dark black color. You normally don't see it when they're standing and hunting, right? You just see that steel gray color. But when they're in flight or when they're preening, you can see this very distinct two-tone wing, right? The black flight feathers and the light colored coverts. Like I mentioned earlier, the great blue herons is the largest in these, the largest heron in Florida. It's actually the largest heron in North America. They're about 4 feet in length from the tip of the bill to the tail, but they have an enormous 72-inch wingspan on average. So that's 6 feet, and I'm 6 feet, and that's approximately what my wingspan is. But unlike me, who weighs in at about 200 pounds, a great blue heron is only about 5 to 6 pounds, thanks in part to the hollow bones that birds have. So when you see these guys fly, you see this big two-tone wing and just massive wingspans. It's pretty impressive. Here's some interesting photos of something that I call the sun salutation pose. Right? So this one on the upper left, when Leslie, myself, and Ken Blackshaw were out birding at State College of Florida, we saw this behavior, just turning right into the sun, opening up its wings. And then later, about a month later, when after shopping at Costco, we went behind at that retention pond, and here enough, there's another great blue with that open wing sun salutation kind of posture. It's kind of an interesting behavior. Here is a juvenile great blue heron, and this was taken at the Venice Rookery. Pretty much, you're not going to confuse a juvenile great blue heron with any other species. They're, again, extremely large. They have similar color patterns. Notice that the crown is not developed yet, right? So they don't have those bold black stripes on either side, or the white down the center. It still has a little bit of the downy feathers in there. As far as the birds, the incubation period is about a month, and then they are nestlings for approximately 2 to 3 months. So as far as great blue herons and herons in general, I believe they're classified as sort of semi-altricial. So for the people who are not necessarily birders, species are kind of put on a scale. So you have precocial birds that when they're born, they're very, very independent. So think ducks and geese, or shorebirds like plovers. They're born, their eyes are open, they have full down, they leave the nest within hours, they can run, they can swim, they can feed themselves. You don't see a parental duck trying to shove its bill down a duckling, right, to feed it. So it's very, very independent. We consider that precocial. On the other end of the spectrum is the altricial birds, and most North American birds are altricial. They're completely dependent on their parents. So think like the classic example is like a robin, right? Or you might have seen like a mockingbird nest, or if you take care of purple martins, have seen purple martins. When they're born, their eyes are closed, they're blind, they don't have any down or just tiny bit of down here and there, and they're just like these little pink embryos. they're completely helpless. They're completely dependent on nutritionally dependent on their parents, and regulating their body temperature and so forth. Well, herons in general kind of fall in that middle category. They have a lot of characteristics of precocial hatchlings. Their eyes are typically open, at least partially, and they have down, either full down or partial down. But they spend a lot of time in the nest, and they're dependent on their parents for nutrition. So they're kind of fall in that middle category, kind of like raptors and owls, same sort of thing. Okay, so here's a couple birds kind of on the rare side. These are great blue herons, but the bird here on the left is the white morph or the white form, or sometimes it's referred to as a great white heron. So I want to say, when most of the time when you see a large white bird, it's going to be a great egret, a species we're going to be talking about later. But I just wanted to point out that these birds are seen. In fact, there was one that was reported in North Lido Beach all throughout this summer, and I was up there on Tuesday trying to get a picture of it, but I was unable to do so. And there was also one reported this summer southwest of Rotunda. So this bird is typically more of a Caribbean species, found more often in the Keys or out in the Yucatan Peninsula, but we're seeing them in our area. They can be seen, but they're relatively rare. I just would want to point out the very heavy dagger-shaped bill and the flesh-colored legs. That kind of sets it apart from the species we're going to talk about next, or in the second half. And just to make IDs even more challenging, then we have down here a species called a hybridized great blue heron called a Werdemann's heron, right? And that is where the great blues and the great white herons ranges overlap. They can produce this hybrid. So it has the head of a great white heron and the body of a great blue heron. But these are all the same species. Okay, just keep that in mind. Has any of the birders here seen a Werdemann's heron? I've never seen one. I got these pictures from the Merlin app. That's this little symbol in the middle is for the Merlin bird ID. Has anyone seen one of those? Okay, I don't see anybody in the chat saying that they have. Yeah, it's extremely rare, right? The great white heron is rare. The Werdemann's even more rare. It doesn't even have it doesn't have an option on eBird to report it. So, okay, moving on. So type in the chat box what this species is. What do we have? Okay, that's right. Diana's got it. So overall blue, the steel blue bird, a little bit purple in the head and the neck, gray bill, tipped in black. Yeah, we got it. Very nice. Yeah, the little blue heron. Very good. And you can see by the range map that it's more restricted to the southeast US. I'm not sure if you can read the key, but the purple areas are where they're seen year-round. And we're fortunate because 11 of these 12 species that we're going to be talking about are seen in our area year-round. So pretty fortunate. So again, little blue heron, very distinct overall, just blue color on the back, on the belly, everywhere, purple on the head and neck. And take note of that bill, gray bill tipped in black. It's an important ID clue. Okay. Take a look at this one. So this is, again, a little blue heron, but it's during breeding time, so it has a different color to its lore. So the lore is that fleshy area between the eye and the bill that lacks feathers. And during breeding season, with all the different hormones going, a lot of different heron species, that color can change. So you can see the difference between this bird where it's gray lores and gray bill, and this one where the lure is turning that kind of sky blue. In fact, the entire bill, I have a picture later on which shows the whole bill that it has that sky blue color. Okay. So what's this bird? I'm going to type that in. What do we got here? What species? What do you think? Anyone would take a guess? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you guys know. Very nice. So this is, in fact, still a little blue heron. It's a juvenile. This is a first year. So it takes a year for little blues to transition into that adult plumage. In fact, this I took in March, and you can already see some of the adult feathers kind of poking through. But again, take note of the bill, how it's a gray bill tipped in black. And also I bring attention to the legs, which is kind of like a yellowish green color. So yes, there are some medium-sized herons that are white that you can confuse this with. But if you keep track of the bill and take note of the color of the legs, it makes the ID relatively easy. I should mention that the little blue heron, size-wise, is about half the size of the great blue heron. So great blue is about 4 foot. Little blues are in that middle range, about 2 feet, and a wingspan of about 40 inches. And this is also a little blue heron. So this is what's sometimes called calico or pied phase of the little blue heron. And you're going to see this typically in the late spring, early summer, May, June, maybe a little bit into the July. And this is one that I see posted quite a bit on Facebook where people have no idea what this bird is. They think it's some strange hybrid or something. But no, this is still a little blue heron. It's just in that strange intermediate phase between its adult and juvenile plumage. But again, take note of that bill. What is it? Gray tipped in black. So, and here we go, just to make the point even clearer. So all three, whether we're talking about the first year immature or the calico or the mature bird, they all have that gray bill tipped in black, or blue tipped in black in case it's in the breeding series. One question I get is, why would a little blue heron be white in the first year? It seems kind of a strange thing to do, right? Why would you want to stick out like a sore thumb in your first year? Wouldn't that make you more vulnerable to predation? Well, the thought is that because they are white in the first year, they are able to mix in with a more gregarious species, a more social species, that being the snowy egrets. So typically herons, they're out by themselves, foraging, hunting on their own, but very often you'll see snowies in flocks that they hunt cooperatively, and they're very tolerant of a little blue heron in this first year plumage, the juvenile plumage, compared to a full-grown adult blue heron. So, if you're a first-year little blue and you can sneak into a large flock of snowies, then it's kind of the like fish schooling effect. The chance of you getting picked out into a large group to be preyed upon decreases, right? And also, they've also found that when they hunt cooperatively in those flocks, they actually get more fish. So they get more prey, and there's a less chance of them getting preyed upon. That's the thought behind that first year plumage. Okay, moving on. Next bird. What do we have? Wait a second. Isn't that a little blue? It's blue, right? It's got the purple in the neck. Isn't that a little blue heron? And you just told me that they have some white, right? Yeah, Bill's got it. And Bren, of course, yeah. So is in fact not a little blue, but this is a tri-colored heron, right? But you know, if you have a little bit of knowledge about the little blues and you know that that they're white in their first year and they go through that calico phase, I can understand why some people might look at this bird and say, oh, it's a little blue in transition. But there's a couple things that I want to point out. One, look at the color of the lore and the lower mandible. See how there's yellow? You're not going to see yellow on a little blue heron, right? And this is a mature bird, and it has breeding plumes coming off the back of the head, which are white. And you're not going to see white plumes coming off of a little blue heron. And also, you have this long white trail down the throat. And what is that? Yeah, I saw that. You know, once I saw that on there, you're right. Tricolored. There's no. I don't know why I put a dash in there. It's not right. It should be all one word. Tricolored. You're right, Bren. And the belly is completely white and white underneath the feathers. So you look at the range. It's very restricted, right? This bird was also called Louisiana heron. Some of you might know it by that name. Let's see. Here's a better picture. Yeah, okay. So again, yellow lures, an overall steel blue bird, same size, same habitat as the little blue, but look at that trail down the throat and very distinct white underparts. You know, so whether it's flying or whether it's hunting, you can see that clear distinction. It's not like a calico phase of the little blue heron where it's kind of splotchy here and there. This is okay. This is very distinct. Okay, it's not splotchy, and again, you can kind of see the breeding plumes coming off the back of the head, that as well. And if you have a chance to observe the feeding behavior of these birds, that's also a very important ID clue when you're determining a species of bird, right? Size, color, patterns, calls, but also habitat and behavior. And if you observe a little blue or a great blue heron, they're very methodical in the way that they hunt, right? They're very slow and meticulous, and they take their time with their shots, right? The more quality shots over quantity. If you ever watch a tricolor heron, they're much more frantic, right? They have their wings out, they're running around, they're chasing the fish. They're just a little bit more spastic when they're hunting. They're more of like the shotgun approach, just more, you know, quantity of shots over quality. And they're actually a lot more fun to observe and to film, to be honest with you. Sometimes you can watch a little blue hunt and it takes 5 minutes for them to move, whereas the tricolors typically running all over the place. So that's a pretty good behavior clue as well. Okay, so here's an interesting picture. Again, it's a tricolor. You can distinctly tell because of that white belly. But if you just observe the head, right, that could be easily confused, right? It's because we know the little blue can also have a blue lore and a blue bill tipped in black. But again, I want to point out, look at those plumes coming out of the back of the head. They're white, right? They're not blue or purple like in the little blue. So it's definitely a try, but you can understand why there can be some confusion. And here's the juvenile. Still very tricolor-like. So still a medium-sized heron, still has the yellow lores and the white trail down the throat, even more prominent, white underparts. And the upper parts are still blue, but they have that rufous, that rusty colored feathers poking through. This way, we took this up at Myakka River State Park this year. Thank you. Thank you. We just got a new camera for Christmas, so we've updated all the pictures. So some of you that have, I know some of you have seen this presentation live, but we got new photos for you. These are all from this year, most of them, I should say. All right, next bird. What do we got? What species of bird is this? What do we got? What do we got? It's got a pretty obvious marking on the head there. What color is that crown? Yeah, yeah, exactly, Diane. You got it. You got it. Yeah, black-crowned night heron. Absolutely. So this again is another medium-sized heron, kind of in the 2-foot range, right? About a 40-inch wingspan as well. Aptly named, one because it's got a black crown and a black back. Really bold red eye, right? But it's also aptly named because it is a night heron, and these are primarily nocturnal. And if you want to observe them feeding, it's best during the twilight hours, you know, dawn and dusk. But if you observe them during the day, like this guy, this is kind of the posture that they're in. They're just kind of hunkered down in this football shape. They don't look very heron-like because they don't have a long neck like their cousins. But when they are hunting, they do have a neck, believe it or not, they do. But normally when you observe them, they're in this posture, right? Very extensive range. In fact, the black-crowned night heron is the most widespread heron in the world. They're very opportunistic eaters. They'll eat whatever, fish, invertebrates, landfill garbage. They'll eat just about anything. So they are well adapted to humans and that sort of thing. But one thing different about them is that they don't stab with their bill. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But when you observe these birds from a distance, it basically looks like a two-toned bird, right? So you have the dark crown and dark back, but then you have the light-colored underparts and cheeks and wing. Now the wing is actually gray, but from a distance, when you're looking through binoculars, you just kind of see a two-toned bird. And if you get this close, you can see those beautiful breeding plumes coming out of the back of the head. So, oh, here's another shot. This was at the rookery. And again, you can see his neck is just all tucked up because he's not actively foraging. He's just hanging out. So they're in that kind of stubby look to them, that football shape, right? And yeah, this is a funny shot. I was at the south end of Minnesota Scrub Preserve looking at the little swampy area for oven birds and water thrushes and stuff, and I see this big red eye staring at me through the foliage. So I snapped a picture of him. But I wanted you to take a note of the shape of the bill. You see how the upper mandible curves down and the bottom mandible is flat? Just keep that in mind. That's going to be an important ID clue a little bit later. But again, you can see the black crown. You can even see the breeding plume kind of coming off to the side there. Okay. Next species. What do we got? Related species. So pretty much just a gray bird, right? All the color patterns up on the head. That should be a clue. Yeah, there you go. Bren's got it. So this is a yellow-crowned night heron. Yeah, very good, everybody. Yellow-crowned night heron. And again, aptly named, well, at least for the yellow crown part of it. So it's got this yellow or light-colored crown, and it's got this white cheek stripe, basically on a black head. Rest of it from the neck down is just gray, right? Not much going on down there, but all the colors on the head. So yeah, yellow-crowned night heron. So typically you're going to find this around on the coast in the salt marshes. When it's breeding, they can move more inland. But this bird is a crustacean specialist. The bulk of the diet is going to be crustacean. So when they're on the coast, you know, we see, you know, Bren, we saw these when we were doing bird surveys at Palm Island, and they're out there hunting the ghost crabs, and they got that really heavy bill, right? And they can just punch it right through the carapace of a crab and just shake it apart or consume it whole. In fact, let me zoom. This is a zoomed in photo, and I want you to really take note of that, how the bill is pretty much curved on both sides, and it's a really heavy dagger-shaped bill, and that I think facilitates their diet. When they're inland, they'll hunt crayfish. So, and they'll supplement their diet with other food sources as well, but crustaceans is their food of choice. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, they love a good ghost crab, right? What was I going to say? So they're so tied into the crustaceans that, in fact, on the Atlantic coast, they will time their breeding with the crab emergence, right? And the crabs are based around local temperatures, so there's this really interconnected web, right? So here, showing it side by side, you can see, very obvious when you see these guys side by side, that the bird up in the upper left, the black crown, is this really just a two-tone bird, dark on the back, light on the sides and the underside. Whereas the yellow crown, all the action is on the head, all the color pattern. It's pretty much just a gray bird from the neck down. So once you see these birds side by side, I mean, it's hard to confuse those two, right? I also should mention that yellow crowns, they're called night herons, but they don't live up to that name. They're hunting all the time, and we see them in I think this picture I took close to noon on the beach. I think that might have been on Stump Pass. So not nearly as nocturnal as the black crown. Okay. Oh, all right. Now we're at a tough spot here. This is, oh, someone else is trying to join in. Hi, Jan, welcome. Jan, you joined in right at the right time. So these are juvenile night herons, right? And there's one that's a yellow crown and one that is a black crown. And there's one of each, so I'm not trying to trick you. This is a challenging ID for a couple of reasons. One, they are just almost identical, right? And what are you looking at? Oh, okay. And they are in this plumage for 2 years. So it's very common, you have a good chance of seeing a juvenile night heron. So some birds, famously like eagles and gulls, take several years before they reach their adult plumage. Well, night herons take 2 years to reach that adult plumage. So, okay, someone already chimed in here. So, right is the black, left is the yellow. Well, let's see what other people have to say. So let's focus on this one right here. Okay, this one on the upper left. What do you think? Is that a yellow-crowned night heron or is that a black-crowned night heron? And why do you think? Why do you think? Give me a reason. Yeah. So again, check this out. We're looking at the one on the upper left. Okay. Is that? Okay, we have some ideas coming in. Okay, well, we have a conflicting view. Okay, Jake thinks this one's a black. Oh, okay. You're gonna change your thing. Left is okay. She changed. Okay, good. Uh-huh. Yeah, you guys have it. Very good. So there we have it. Very good. So, a lot of times when you read the books, they'll talk about the relative size of these little teardrop markings on the wings, which, man, that's hard. I don't rely on that at all. I mean, I don't have a ruler out to measure how big those markings are. But yeah, if you look at these bills, that's what I rely on mostly. What I gave this presentation once, and someone said, "Well, this one's got to be a yellow because it's got this long neck." And I guess that would be true because it's probably hunting and it's during the day, and so its neck is out and extended. Whereas this one, it's kind of tucked in, so it's got a shorter neck. They do have shorter necks, the black crowns do, but he's probably not actively hunting, so it's not fully extended. So that's okay. I can buy that for this particular comparison with these two birds. But the one that I really look at is the bill. And here, let me pull up a little annotation, see if I can get this to work. So let me draw 3 parallel lines here. So if you look at this one, let's see if I can get that. There's that one, and the base of the mouth here, make it parallel, and the top. That's about parallel. Oh, whoop, I screwed that up. Let me undo that one here. Let me redraw that. So, okay, about there. So clearly you can see how the bottom of the bill is flat. The top mandible is curving down, and even the mouth is kind of curved down. Whereas if I do the same thing with this yellow crown, I'll take it from the base of the bottom mandible and I'll make 3 parallel lines, and you can even see the mouth in the middle there. The split is straight and the top. Hey, I think that looks pretty good. But you can see how the top mandible curves down and the bottom mandible curves up. Can everyone kind of see that? I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that is what I personally rely on. People have all said, "Oh, this one's got yellow on it, so that's a yellow crown." No, that doesn't have anything to do with it. I mainly look at the curvature of the bill to make that determination, and also habitat too. You know, time of day, habitat, what's going on. Those are all important clues. But when you're just evaluating based on the looks, that's what I personally rely on, is the shape of the bill. Because again, the yellow crown is that crustacean hunter. They have a really heavy, thick, dagger-shaped bill to punch into the carapace of those crabs that they're eating. And the yellow crown, or sorry, the black crown, not that picky of an eater. And it doesn't stab with its bill. It just goes around and kind of grasps things. So different feeding behavior. All right, let me get rid of all these little drawing things. Okay, get rid of that. All right, our last heron, what do we got? This is my favorite heron of all 12. This is definitely my favorite. This is a little bird, by the way. Yay, yeah, Diane's excited too. Another green heron fan. Yeah. So this is a small bird, small heron, right? It's the second smallest of the 12. Right, it only comes in at an 18-inch length and about 26-inch wingspan on average. Again, Florida is in that purple range, so we get to see these guys year-round. It's my favorite because I think it's just beautifully patterned. You know, I think it's got a lot of going on. The dark crown and the dark back and dark wings, which, you know, green, I've heard someone say that's kind of olive green. It's a bit of a stretch in my opinion, but we'll go with it. The very pretty rufous color, the rich color on the sides, and the streaking down the throat. It's a pretty striking little bird. But they're kind of masters of camouflage. They're real intense when they hunt. In fact, here's a good picture of it, showing the intensity of this little bird. I took this at Kiwantis, and it didn't care how close I got to it. It was so intent on hunting that it was just laser focused on what it was doing. Another cool thing about the green herons, one of my favorite attributes, is that they've actually one of the few species of birds that have learned to use tools. They bait fish. So they can hunt like other herons and chase after fish, of course, but they also have this interesting habit of using a leaf or a stick or a piece of bread or an insect and placing it in the water and letting the fish come to them. I think it's so fascinating. I read about this, and then when I was still living up in Pennsylvania, I got to see this thing from start to finish, completely this behavior, completely play out right in front of me. So I was watching this large duck pond outside of my martial arts studio up in PA, and I saw this little green heron walking along the edge of the pond. I was closest to the building, and it flew up into this tree that was kind of half dead because half of it was swamped out by the pond. And it grabbed a little stick and it just worked it back and forth until it snapped it off, flew back down to the edge of the pond, walked out, dropped that stick on the surface of the water, and within a minute, it had speared a very large fish, very, very large, so large that it couldn't deal with it in the water, had to bring it back out onto the land, and just repeatedly piercing this fish to try to chop it up so it could swallow it. It eventually did, but that fish was about as big as that bird. It was kind of amazing that it could get it down, but it was really cool just to see that whole behavior just play out in front of me. It's really fascinating. They have a very distinctive kind of a harsh call. A lot of times you see these birds because you flush them out. They're really masters of camouflage. Even with all this different colors on them, they can hide within the reeds and you don't see them until you flush them out. And they let you know when you flush them. They let you know. They give you a really harsh cluck call, and they have a strange behavior of kind of flying with their neck extended, which is kind of a strange thing for herons. They usually tuck their heads in when they fly, but when the green herons take off, when they're flushed out, when they're irritated, they let you know their neck's extended, and they put their crown up, kind of like this guy, but he's not doing this on purpose. This is from the wind across the street at Bay Heights Park. But they'll put it up and their neck out, and they have kind of a distinctive flight pattern, and sometimes you can just identify them just from that. Oh, and here's a juvenile. So you can see the bill is a little bit lighter. If you go back, the adult has got a dark bill. That's important for later. This is a juvenile, and it's got a light colored bill. There's a lot more streak and modeling on the wings. There's no rufous colors, and it's even got a little bit of the down feathers sticking out of the crown. And then here's itty bitty little ones. This was at the Venice Rookery. There's actually two. I cropped out the one. This guy's days old, right? Still has the white down on the belly and the gray down on the top. It's got some pin feathers, but grasping onto those reeds, waiting for the parents to bring back some food. But I think they're ugly but adorable at the same time. Okay, so for a quick review, we're just going to rip through these quick because I don't want to keep you guys too long. But and these are all headshots, by the way. One of my mentors told me you should be able to identify every bird just by their head. So we're going to put it to the test. This one's pretty easy. A obvious black crown and red eyes. That's a black crowned night heron. Feel free to type in the chat if you want to try to beat me to it. But bold stripes on the side of the head, large dagger-shaped bill. This is the largest heron in North America. That is the great blue heron. Yeah, there you go, Maggie. You got it. This is a little bit of a challenging photo. I threw this in here on purpose, trying to fool people. Again, you might think, oh, it's a blue and it's got a blue lure and a blue bill. It's a little blue heron, but no, Bill is right. It is a tri-colored heron, right? Because look at that trail down the throat, and you got the white plumes at the back. You're not going to have white plumes, breeding plumes out of a mature little blue heron. It's not going to be there. So this is a good identity. Sometimes this is all I see of birds flying away from me, and I'll just see the back of the head of the tricolor and see those white plumes, and you can make a positive ID. Little bird, not the best lighting because this is all reddish colored, and this is that olive green, I guess you could say. That would be the fan favorite. Everyone likes the little green heron, or just, I should say, green heron. You don't have to say little. And then here's the breeding little blue heron. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I gave it away. Let's keep talking. So purple head, all blue overall, no white feathers, but this really cool beak, right? I love when it's breeding season because they have that sky blue lure and tipped in black. Okay, and last but not least, everything's all the color markings on the head. It's pretty obvious if you're looking at the crown what this is. Heavy bill, built for crustaceans, gray everywhere else, yellow crown night heron. Yeah, you got it, Maggie. Very nice. Okay, moving on, second half. We're gonna rip through these. So we got 4 egrets and 2 bitterns to cover. Here's the first one. Very large bird. What is it? Second in our list of birds, comes in at about 38 inches. So about 3 foot, about a foot smaller than a great blue. Yeah, look at those black legs and long yellow bill. And Bill's got it. Yeah, that's great. Egret. Diane's got it. Yeah, you guys are smart. Great egrets. Very elegant looking bird. And I'm going to do a side by side with the great white heron here in a minute. But great egrets are very, again, long necked, very elegant looking. And here's an interesting shot that I took at Stump Pass, and it has some of these modified feathers out the back, but all white bird, black legs, yellow bill, and these beautiful, what are called egrets. Okay, it's probably where they get the name egrets, right? These egrets are these modified feathers that a lot of species of heron, and particularly the great egret and also the snowy egret, they produce these feathers, and they can actually stand them up as part of their mating ritual. These were very, very highly prized. I'm sure a lot of you already know it because you're birders, but these were very, very prized and almost led to their extinction. So in the fashion, it was very fashionable in the 1800s and the early 1900s to have those particular egrets in women's hats. In fact, sometimes they would put entire birds in women's hats, but these egrets were extremely popular. So much so, just to give you an idea, back in 1886, an ounce of these feathers would fetch you $32, which at the time was twice the price of gold. So very, very highly prized, a lot of extensive plume hunting, so much so that it kind of birthed the conservation movement. This, to this day, the great egret is the symbol of the National Audubon Society. And the National Audubon Society was kind of birthed out of the need to preserve these birds. And obviously it was a success. Some parts of Central America where the plume hunting continued haven't quite recovered, but luckily for us, we have these just fantastic, beautiful birds. This is at the Venice Rookery, and look at that lime green lure, just absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Okay. Oh, and here's the side-by-side comparison. Again, most of the time when you see a very large white heron, it's going to be a great egret, right? Long neck, very long black legs, long slender bill in comparison to the kind of the beefy white morph of the great blue heron, also called the great white heron, right? Look how thick that bill is. Look at the flesh-colored legs. The great egret is very common, whereas the great white heron is pretty rare, But who knows? It seems like these tropical species of plants and animals keep migrating further and further to the poles as the climate is changing. So we may see this bird more and more often. Who knows? But again, usually when you're out in the field and you see a big white bird, it's probably going to be a great egret. You might want to, it's kind of like if it's a horse and not a zebra. You might want it to be a zebra, but it's probably not. It's probably a great egret. I tried to make a great egret into a great white heron at Kiwanis Park earlier this year, but I was quickly shot down by the birders. It was a juvenile, and it was a juvenile great egret, and it wasn't. Anyway, moving on. So what do we got here? This one's very obvious. Look at that shaggy. Yeah, see, you guys got it. That pink bill, tipped half pink, half black. Yeah, that reddish color, it's unmistakable. The gray body, gray legs. This is a reddish egret. Yeah, fantastic, right? Yeah, love the reddish. Absolutely. Beautiful, beautiful birds. Very restricted range. So this is a saltwater species, typically on the coasts, right? Can be uncommon, can be slight, kind of rare, but can be locally abundant as well if you know where to look, right? So these are reported quite often, like on Siesta Key Beach and North Lido Beach. You'll see one at each typically. There's one that hangs around. It seems like, excuse me, travels between Stump Pass, that little tidal pool at the end of the trail at Stump Pass. You'll see one there typically, or it might be the same individual flying over to Palm Island by that tidal pool. But yeah, you can definitely see them. This one was taken at Sanibel. Do they breed in Florida? Huh, that's a good question. That's a great question. I'm not sure about that. Do we have any anyone want to chime in on that? What do they breed in Florida? I don't know. I don't know. I have to look into that. That's the first time someone asked me that question. That's great. Yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. This one was actually taken at Stump Bass, right at that tidal pool. But unmistakable that half, as far as IDing, that half pink bill and half black, and that shaggy. I mean, you just can't miss that shaggy red neck, which gives it its very distinct name. Sometimes you'll see them with a blue lure when they're breeding. And as far as behavior, they're a very active forager, very much like a tricolor. They extend out their wings, they're running around, chasing after stuff, they're jumping up in the air. They're very fun to watch when they're actively foraging. Okay, so this can be a little bit confusing. There's a white morph, just like the great blue heron, it's got a white morph. The reddish egret has a white morph as well. All white bird, black legs, which you might think, oh wait, that could be confused for a great egret. But if you get a look at the bill, that's diagnostic right there. Half pink, half black, right? And keep in mind, a reddish egret is considerably smaller. It's a kind of a medium-sized heron. It's smaller than a great egret. I think it's like third on our list as far as size. Comes in about 30 inches. Now a juvenile reddish egret white morph will have an entire black bill. So that can, with the black bill and the black legs, that might confuse somebody with the next bird that we're going to see. But again, the reddish egret, the red morph, I guess you can call it, is very, very common. The white morph is less so. Let me ask the birders out there, in your opinion, which are more common in our area in Southwest Florida? The white morph of the reddish egret or the white morph of the great blue heron? Which in your experience have you seen or heard reports about? Any thoughts on that? I have not this is not my photograph, as you can see from the Merlin bird ID thing on the bottom. I'm not sure if I've seen a report of the white morph reddish egret this year. Not that I've come across. Okay, all right, thanks, Bren. So it's Bren just sent me a message that it's It's a resident breeder in Central America, the Bahamas, the Caribbean, and the Gulf Coast of the United States and Mexico. So, you know, Gulf Coast of the United States. So I guess they are a resident breeder. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, and Banana Springs. Okay, thanks, Bill. Cool. I have not seen one of these, so I just might not be looking in the right spot. Okay, so moving on. Next species, what do we have? Boy, this one's very obvious. This is a medium-sized bird, again, about 2 feet in length. Look at those black legs, black bill, with the yellow lore and the yellow feet. Yeah, you guys have it. Yeah, snowy egret for sure. Snowy egrets. And again, they get that name, I think, due to these very wistfully, I don't want to describe, I was going to say feathery feathers, but that's not a good term for that. But these modified feathers coming off the head and off the chest and off the tail also made them a prime target for plume hunters. Yeah, those golden slippers. I sometimes tell the kids that they're wearing snow boots for snow egrets, but then I'm reminded that no, snow boots are not yellow. Rain boots are yellow. But, you know, work with me a little bit. Maybe the snowy egret put on his snow boots are yellow. I don't know. Whatever. Golden slippers. I like that. So these birds, let me show you. So when they have this up curved tail, that to me provides a silhouette that sometimes when I don't catch any other colors on the bird, I just see a light colored bird, but I can see this profile. That makes it diagnostic, I think. Sometimes I can just see that. It's very common to have that upturned tail. This one is this is definitely a breeding snowy. You can tell because it's darkened its lore and its feet. It's got that orange color, a lot more of the egrets going on here on the chest and the head and the tail. Now, these birds do hybridize, I should mention. They do hybridize with tricolors, little blue herons, and also cattle egrets. Okay. This bird I just took on Tuesday during my hunt up at North Lido Beach, trying to find the white morph of the great blue heron. And I threw this in here because I just wanted to point out that sometimes they can present this the yellow up the back of the legs. So don't let that confuse you. That's still a snowy, obviously from the feet and from the bill and from the lore, right? Okay, I'm gonna push ahead here. We're already an hour in. I appreciate everyone sticking around. So what bird is this? So this is a breeding bird. Yeah, look at the short, kind of stubby. Yeah, and the orange crown, orange back. Yeah, you guys got it. Very good. This is the cattle egret. This is interesting because the cattle egret is a non-native species. It was first introduced into South America in 1877, made its first appearance in the United States through Florida in 1941, and then within a couple decades, it went all the way across the other coast. So a lot of species of birds have been harmed by human activities. This is a species that has greatly benefited from human activity, particularly in logging and the expanse of agriculture. And just like the name says, you know, you typically find cattle egrets hanging out with livestock, right? So their range has expanded all over the place. And you can even find cattle egrets up into Canada, up into Alaska, basically anywhere that you have any kind of grazing cattle, you're going to find cattle egrets. And it might surprise some of you, but this is actually the most numerous wading bird in Florida. Not just the most numerous heron in Florida, but the most numerous wading bird in Florida. And I know when I first read that, it was kind of a surprise to me because normally where I'm birding, I don't see many cattle egrets because I don't stand in the middle of a livestock field in order to do my birding. But yeah, so it's definitely the most numerous bird. They're very gregarious, very social. So when you see them, they form very big flocks. And for being the most numerous wading bird, they've typically not seen wading. You know, they're a different habitat. They're in the fields. They're not standing in the water hunting. Typically, not not always, but typically they're not. So, like take celery fields for example. When you go to the celery fields, when you're going along Raymond Road to the second platform, we usually keep our eyes on the celery fields, and you see all the other kind of herons, the great egrets and the great blue herons and the bitterns and things like that. But then take a moment to look on the other side of Raymond Road, and there's that cattle field there, and you'll see cattle egrets and meadowlarks and things like that in that field, and they rarely cross each other. Like you don't see the cattle egrets over mingling with the great egrets knee deep in water, and you don't see the great egrets out there hanging out with the cattle, right? So, whoa, we just had a power surge. Can everyone still hear me? Our lights just flickered. All right, still on. Good. Okay. Another shot. These were all taken at the State College of Florida. If you want to see breeding snowies or breeding cattle egrets, that's a great place to go. And when they breed, they actually they do a lot of their nesting over water, near to water, but typically they hang out in agricultural fields, right? So that's showing the chest. Here's an interesting breeding bird. This was actually taken in the same location, but a month earlier than these individuals. They're all breeders, right? And it kind of makes me wonder why this one has that candy corn look to it. So I tried to research that because I think it's absolutely beautiful. You got the yellow, orange, red, and then the purple lures. Still has the orange crown, reddish legs instead of the yellow legs like these individuals. Okay, and I'm curious, and maybe someone else can chime in here, whether this is a form of sexual dimorphism. Possibly this could be a male or the female, or this is the female or the male, but they're very distinct between the two. And yeah, it's fascinating. I haven't gotten an answer on that, why there's two different kind of forms of the breeding plumage. When they're out of breeding, I should mention that they're just basically an all-white bird, and the legs are black and the bill is yellow, but short, short. Okay, so let's take a look at all these medium-sized white herons and compare them. So obviously we have the snowy egret up here in the upper right corner, black legs, black bill, yellow lores, yellow feet. And compare that to this cattle egret. Again, this is that strange candy corn bill. This is a breeding bird. And again, I should mention that when it's out of breeding, this bird would have black legs and a yellow or orangish bill, but still considerably shorter. You see how short and stout it is compared to the long bill of the snowy? Right? And then in the upper left, we have a first year, an immature little blue heron. And you can't see the bill because I caught it while it had its bill still hunting, but you can definitely see the leg color, right? That yellowish greenish color. Okay. Next. Oh, this is a really cool bird. What do we have here? Heavy streaking, really thick neck, right? Found in shallow water, heavy reeded, found in the reeds. This is not my picture, this is a Merlin picture. You're right. Okay. Thanks, Bill. So you're right, it's a bittern. What kind of bittern? We got 2 bitterns to cover. What kind of bittern is that? Yeah, you're right, Bill. American bittern. That is correct. Yeah. So this is a large bird. This is the fourth largest of the 12, right? It comes in at about, on average, about 29 inches, wingspan about 42. This is the one species that is migratory. This is one of our snowbirds, typically seen between September and April, but you can see the distribution. It's considered to be fully migratory. So there's very little overlap between its breeding range and its wintering range. Okay. Heavily streaked. And this is where you typically see it, this kind of habitat, right? In amongst the reeds. And for such a big bird, they are just masters of camouflage. Really, really, you really got to train your eyes to find them. I've only seen a few of them. I think both times it was at the celery fields at the first bird walk right across from the Sarasota Audubon. And they're in the shallow water and they're hiding in the reeds. And the cool thing about bitterns is that when they are threatened, they will point their bill straight up to the sky and just use all that streaking to blend in with the reeds. It's even called a bittern pose. And what's really freaky about them is they can focus their eyes downward. So if you, and I've seen pictures of this, when they're frightened, they'll get into that bittern pose with their bill straight up and then turn their eyes towards the threat. And if you can get a photo of it, it kind of looks like these little googly eyes. It's kind of bizarre. And they've been shown to, they see them at that, okay, great. You can see they'll also kind of waver back and forth, right, to kind of simulate the reeds. So it's pretty fascinating bird. And this is another distinctive marking for the adults. They'll have this black throat stripe. It's usually not this evident. This bird is singing. And let me see if I can play that for you. This is the most bizarre song. Most of the noises from the herons are kind of harsh and they sound pretty similar. But this song heard during breeding, right? The males is just very, very strange. Hopefully you can hear this. Yeah, that that bird, it sounds like water droplets. It doesn't sound anything, it doesn't even sound like a bird to me, right? So, Leslie, can you send a message to Bill? Okay, you got it. Okay. So yeah, it's just a fascinating sound. So if you're in the breeding range, if you're up north and you get a chance to hear these birds, it's quite fascinating. When they fly, I should also mention that they have very dark flight feathers, like the great blue heron. So when you see them in flight, you'll see the light colored coverts, and then the flight feathers are black. And you can still see that black neck stripe even when they have it tucked in during flight. Okay, last one. What bird do we have here? Black cap, black back, buff colored on the wing and on the sides and the chest, and the heavy streaking, light colored bill. And yes, you got it. That is the least bittern. And again, we're lucky we're in that purple range, so we get to see them year round. And this is the smallest heron in the group, coming in at a whopping 13 inches long on average and a wingspan of about 17 inches. And again, it's just kind of a buff and brown overall with the black crown and the black back. Notice the light bill, that's important for differentiation later. And here's another picture. This is a great picture. I'm jealous of Bob. I have crummy pictures of least bitterns, right? Okay, let me let Bill back in. Okay, so this, I think he took this at the celery fields back in on the Raymond platform, Raymond Road platform. But I have really a hard time getting pictures of these guys, so I'm pretty jealous. This, I'm pretty confident to say, is a female. This is one of the one species where they are sexually dimorphic. So if you look back, here's a male, and I can tell because it has this black crown and black back. And in the females and the juveniles, that black is replaced by brown. Now, what makes this a female and not a juvenile? Well, very, very distinct wing margins. Okay, great. Great to have you back, Bill. Very distinct wing margin, so that I think in a juvenile this be much more dispersed and not as well defined. So I think Bob got a good shot of this female. So let me just say, in comparison to the American bittern, it's kind of opposites, because the American bittern you usually find in reedy, shallow water, whereas typically you observe the least bittern hanging onto reeds, but into patches of open water. We see them again at the celery fields, and I've photographed them poorly at the State College of Florida, and they seem to prefer kind of being on the edge of deep water, even though they're a little tiny little bird. That's where I normally see them, observe them. And another interesting behavior is if you see a lot of other species like boat-tailed grackles, for example, nesting in the area or inhabiting the area, it's a good chance you'll have least bitterns, because they'll take advantage of the fact that boat-tailed grackles are very aggressive, and boat-tailed grackles will mob potential predators. And it seems like the least bitterns will take advantage of that and put their nests close to those more aggressive birds to add a layer of protection against predation. And here's a side-by-side comparison. These are the two that are most commonly confused, the least bittern and the green heron. And again, just take a look. These are both adults, and the dark bill of the green heron as opposed to the yellow bill of the least. The green is, they both have the black crown, but the black or olive green extends through the entire wing, whereas the least bittern has that buffy patch on the wing. And it's just, the green herons are just a darker bird overall as compared to the least bittern. Okay, let's do a review. Review. So quickly, that one's obvious, right? Half pink, half black bill with the shaggy red head. That is the reddish. We got our breeding. I got all breeding photos of the cattle egrets. I apologize for that. I'll get some more in the fall of the non-breeding. But the candy corn bill and the orange crown. Lime green lure of the great egret. We have, again, there's another breeding bird. We have an orange lure, but that long black bill and those plumes coming off the back of the head, that's the snowy egret. Here's that little least bittern, and again, black cap, but mostly buff colored, and that yellow bill. And wow, look at that. That's American bittern is singing his heart out, and you can see the streaking and also the black throat stripe. Yeah, Brandon. Okay, so if you can hang out for about a couple more minutes, let's test your knowledge. I'm going to show you some photos. These ones are not perfectly cropped and light. These are a little bit more challenging, I think. And this time, I don't want you to type in the chat. I just want you to kind of keep your answers to yourself and see how well you do, see how well I've done in teaching. Let's go through it. All right, here we go. First bird. Pretty obvious, pretty easy. All the action is up there on the head. If you see the color of the top of the head, you'll know what this bird is. I'm going to go through these pretty quick because I think you guys have it. Really obvious. That shaggy neck and that bill really stands out. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. But I think you guys have these. All blue, gray bill tipped in black. Pretty obvious as well. Can't see much of the face, but you pretty much have everything you need to ID this bird. So I'm going to move on to the next one. Okay, this one could be a little bit of a challenge. Look at that lure, look at the neck. And next one. Okay, again, look at that eye, look at the crown. I just gave it away. Okay, this is one. A pretty big bird, second largest heron that we talked about. And this is the way you're going to see it, right, in the field. You're going to see it mixed in with all the reeds out there waiting. So sometimes you can't see all the field marks, but there's enough there that you can tell what it is. Okay. This guy you're going to see late spring, early summer, May, June, in that particular phase. Smallest heron. Again, I'm jealous of Bob's picture there. It's a great shot. I gotta hang out at the celery fields more, apparently. Largest heron in North America. Look at those beautiful, bold eye stripes and those modified feathers on the chest. Another breeder. I really have to go get a non-breeding picture of this bird, but the candy corn bill kind of gives it away. My favorite bird. Another good shot from Bob. Intensely focused on what it's going after. Okay, a little bit of a challenge, but take a look at that bill. You know, it's gray tipped in black. There's a theme there. And you can kind of make out the legs. It's definitely not black. They're lighter in color. So that should be a good clue, good indication of what species we're looking at. Hey, great shot, Bob. Pretty large bird, thick neck, hanging out in the reeds, very camouflaged, very odd sounding song. And you can see a little bit of the black poking out. Okay, here's a couple. I just took this across the street at Bay Heights Park. This is right at the boat ramp. Fisherman was taking his boat out and he just dumped all his bait shrimp over the side of the boat. And so normally these guys wouldn't be hunting together, but there was plenty of food there, so they were happy to gorge themselves. And a little bit after I took this picture, a laughing gull joined them. So, and here's a shot I took at on Palm Island. I saw these three lining up, and I was like, man, I got to get a shot of this. And I tried to get it so they're all equally distant from me, so you can get a relative size. Size for IDing is mainly just for relative, right? So you can't look at this bird and say, how many inches is that? It's tough to tell, but when you see them in comparison to the other ones, it's very obvious. Okay, let's cruise back really quickly, see how you did. All right, number one, that is a yellow-crowned night heron. All the colors on the head. It's a gray bird, crustacean eater. Reddish egret, obviously that shaggy red head and the pink bill. Little blue heron, Okay, a little black on the little blue. Snowy, look at those golden slippers. And here's the tricolored heron. You know it's a tricolor because it's got that yellow lure and it's got that white trailing down the throat. And you can even see a little bit of the white plumes coming out of the back of the head. And obvious black crown night heron. It's just kind of, it's not a mature bird, but you can still tell it's a black crown night heron. Big red eye. Great egret, all white bird, black legs, long, thin, yellow bill. Calico little blue. We repeated that again just to try to trip you up. I'm sure you got it. The least bittern, don't confuse it with the green heron. Least bittern's got that buff colored wing, kind of a lighter color overall. This is a male. The largest heron in North America, great blue heron, unmistakable pattern on the head. And there's the candy corn of the breeding cattle egret. And you can see it's out in the field, right? It's not standing in water, which is pretty normal. And our favorites, fan favorite, the green heron, right? So it's kind of dark all around, that rusty color, dark bill, intensely focused on its prey. And then we got an immature first year, little blue heron, greenish legs. Again, that same black tip on the gray bill. The American bittern, thick neck, very mottled, very striped. Excellent at camouflage. This is I bet you he took this at the celery fields too, same location. And then you got a snowy on the right and a little blue on the left. And then from left to right, we got a snowy, a great blue heron, and a reddish egrets. Fantastic. How'd we do? You guys get 100%? I hope so. I just want to thank everyone for hanging out. Appreciate it. The best way I found to learn these birds is to go ahead and teach that to other people. So, you know, take your friends and family members birding and show them the different nuances of the different birds. Let me once again. What's this? Grace asked if a yellow crown will eat an entire crab whole and die. Yes, they can eat them completely whole, or they'll shake them apart. Right. So once again, let me throw up the link for check, and I want you know, you can go and check that out. No pun intended, and see what the upcoming events are. And if you'd like to donate, that would be fantastic and help us with our educational outreach. Oh, let me throw up a file here. I don't think any of this got sent out. I made this little heron cheat sheet, which I guess now it's probably, you can't use it. Oh, did I send it privately? Hang on, let me send it to everyone. 1 second. Don't send me any private messages so I can get this out to everybody. Okay. Yeah, see if go ahead and see if I can unmute. Hang on 1 second. There you go. Now you should be able to unmute yourselves.
Michael?
Yes.
This is Diane.
Hi, Diane.
Regarding the white morph of the great blue heron, I guess I always thought that the white morph was like a mutation, but I was getting the impression from your talk that they might actually be a breeding species. Do they breed with each other? Or I guess I don't understand how they work or how they occur.
Yeah, so great question. So from my understanding is they are just a morph of the great blue heron. They're not considered a separate species, but they do, you know, again, they're typically found further south, right? They're found more often in the Caribbean, right? Or you'll find them more often in the Keys than you do up in our area. They do breed, right?
With
And
each other? They breed with each other?
They can breed with themselves, and when their ranges overlap, they can, I guess you would call it a hybridize. They can hybridize, and that's where you get that odd Wordemans. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Wordemans, heron. Let me go.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but that's extremely rare. I don't know. I think I asked that question before, whether anyone had seen a Wordemans heron. That picture that I got from Merlin was taken in Florida. So yeah, there it is. So this is that hybrid between the great blue heron and I guess you can call it the great white heron, right? So it's got the head. It's got the head of a great white heron and a body of a great blue heron, but I don't think it's categorized as a separate species. Who knows? Maybe an ornithologist trying to earn his PhD will classify it as a new species. I don't know. At this point, from my understanding, that they're all great blue herons, right?
Right.
And when you report it, it's typically reported as a great blue heron white form or great blue heron blue form. And like I said, the Wordman is so rare that it's not even a category on eBird. So
a good example of that, this is Bill, is that we've had a great white heron here in the mountains of North Carolina for several months. And it actually acts, it seems to be probably a young bird, but it's been acting like it's building a nest. So, and I started looking at the maps, and they do occur all up and down the East Coast. But we spent a year in the Florida Keys, and I never saw a Wordemans. And you don't see very many blues down there. So, and of course, reddish egrets also have a white form, which I have seen on in the Inglewood area. And herons around the world, there are several other species, like reef herons, which come in both a dark and a white form. So the usual explanation is that the different colors reflect different abilities to catch certain prey items, under different light conditions. Therefore, they have differing evolutionary advantages. So to be half and half probably doesn't have much of an advantage the way the other two would.
okay, makes sense. Thanks, Bill. Any other questions?
Can you hear me? This is Bill
Yes.
Paulson.
Yeah, Bill.
It's interesting what he said, because the only white morph of the great blue heron I've ever seen was in South Carolina, near the North Carolina border, in Lake Keowee, outside Greenville, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if that could be an autosomal recessive. They're so rare that we have in my backyard a yellow-headed pileated woodpecker. The only place that they've ever been found is in Prospect, Kentucky, and Hornby Island in Vancouver. And the more I read about it, it sounded like that they are autosomal recessive, and that they probably can't breed. You'd have to have two that have half the gene.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Thank you all for your participation and hanging out with us. It was a great evening.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yep. Well, thank you, everybody. And again, feel free to download that Heron cheat sheet there if you'd like, and check out the Czech website for upcoming events. And hopefully, we'll see you out there birding. Take care, everybody.
Michael, are you going to do more of these?
I would like to. Yeah. So I'm gonna reach out to Czech and see if they'll sponsor some more in the future. So
yeah, this is a blast.
Oh, great. I'm glad you liked it. We're kind of unsure about the whole Zoom thing because we're used to doing this live, but doing Zoom
works good.
I'm interested in how most of you found out about the program.
Yes.
Website.
So we did it 3 ways. We sent out emails and we posted on the Czech website, and I also posted it on Facebook. So to help us with future marketing, where if you wouldn't mind maybe sending a chat message to Leslie and letting us know how you heard or how you got the link, whether it was Facebook, email, or the Czech website. That would really help us out. Okay, thanks everybody. If there's not any other questions.
All right. Hope to meet you all in person sometime.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Bye now.
Bye.